welcome to Broken Entertainment. There are certain movies that the media deems must be a success. They must be identified as successful. They must be seen as amazing and great and strong and brave and so on and so forth. And In the Heights is one of them. Part of that is because it's done by Lin Manuel Miranda, who a lot of people really, really like, and the media has kind of a creepy obsession with. And part of it is because it is an all minority cast, in that it's all Latinos, and it's about a Latino community in New York. So they're trying to get this to be a success whether or not it actually is. And I want to take a look at the numbers and these articles because you'll see just how far they're willing to go to stretch the truth. Now, could these numbers improve? Could the ratings rebound? Yes, that could all happen. It could end up being a very successful movie, but to this point, the data we have suggests otherwise. Now, Lin Manuel Miranda is a guy who I think is talented, at least musically. You know, obviously with his successes on Broadway, he knows his audience. He's able to put together great shows that people enjoy. As somebody who is a trained historian, seeing the things that happened in Hamilton, I have a really hard time with Hamilton. I can listen to the music, because I know people, I'll put it that way, who really, really like it, so I hear the music all the time, and it doesn't drive me nuts. But actually watching it, I don't like race swapping to begin with, and I detest historical race swapping because now you're lying and changing history. And the only reason I haven't covered BBC's Anne Boleyn, which has a black Anne Boleyn, is because I don't think it's worth the time. And that was shown by the fact that it bombed hard. So rather than give it any level of attention, I just kind of moved on. This one I think is more interesting in that it shows it's not race swapping. This is in a Latino community, etc. There's nothing wrong with the casting. But it says a lot about how the media covers entertainment, and I think that's important to expose. So let's get started on this first article. In the Heights, a box office disappointment, why it's not a failure. So this is June 15th. This is like date of first information, basically. In the Heights, opening weekend at the box office fell notably short of expectations, but that doesn't necessarily mean the film will be a commercial failure. Based on Lin Manuel Miranda's first Broadway musical, which won the Tony Award for Best Musical years before the premiere of Hamilton, In the Heights is directed by Crazy Rich Asians John M. Chu and stars an ensemble cast that includes Anthony Ramos, Corey Hawkins, Leslie Grace, Olga Meredez. All these people I've never heard of. The film was projected to gross upwards of $25 million in its opening weekend. That's kind of crazy for a musical, but sure. Unfortunately, In the Heights fell... So let's stop right there. Unfortunately. Since at this point in the article you're just talking about the numbers, I don't think you should be talking about unfortunately, but putting that unfortunately in there tells you a lot about where this writer's going. In the Heights fell significantly short of that projected first weekend take, bringing in $11.4 million in 4 days, falling to second place at the box office behind A Quiet Place Part 2, which was in its third weekend. That disappointing performance has understandably been viewed as a failure by many, especially for a film that's received such a major marketing push. Stop. Maybe it's me, but until these articles came out, I had never heard of this movie. Now, I watch a lot of streaming services, so maybe I'm not seeing the commercials for it. That's a possibility for sure. But I had not heard of this from anybody until, actually not even until this article came out, It wasn't until Lin Manuel Miranda apologized to the Twitter idiots for not casting dark enough Latinos that I even heard of this movie. And they're talking about this huge marketing push from Warner Brothers. You know, I got a huge marketing push from Warner Brothers. Wonder Woman 1984. That was a huge marketing push. You couldn't go anywhere without hearing about Wonder Woman 1984. However, there's reason to believe that In the Heights will still be a success. For starters, In the Heights released the same cinema streaming hybrid model that all Warner Brothers films have taken this year, appearing at no extra charge on HBO Max on the same day as the theatrical premiere. This is a absolute stupid argument. And the reason I say that, I will show you the numbers in a minute. The reason I say that is all the other movies they've done that with have done very, very well at theaters. So that's garbage and stupid. They even go on to say, in fairness, data for previous same-day HBO Max releases have generally shown that streaming availability doesn't cut into the movie's box office performance too badly, and films that do well on one platform generally do well on the other, but it's still something to consider. So they're saying, hey, it's not doing very well, probably in part because it was released on HBO Max, even though that hasn't affected other movies that come out. So you can't use that as a defense. It doesn't work. And here is the evidence. Here's Warner Brothers. The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It, has grossed $50 million. Now let's go to the next Warner Brothers film, In the Heights. This is for June. And this is total gross versus is currently sitting at $16,829,000. Okay, and let's look at another Warner Brothers. Godzilla vs. Kong, which is still bringing in money in the U.S., just hit $1 million, or $100 million in the U.S. This number doesn't show it. It's slightly out of date, but not by much. This one is at $100 million in the United States. Still at 3,084 theaters, which is fewer theaters than In the Heights. But you can't have a performance like Godzilla vs. Kong, which did incredibly well when it first came out, and was available on HBO Max the same day, and tell me that HBO Max is the problem. And there's more. Those Who Wish Me Dead is not a good example. Mortal Kombat, 42 million domestically. Still available in 3,114 theaters. Brought in 402,852,000 just this month to date. Again, available on HBO Max and in theaters at the same time, and people went to the theaters and it made a bunch of money. And finally, I will end with Tom and Jerry. Tom and Jerry came out at the same time as Raya and the Last Dragon and was available for free on HBO Max and at the theaters at the same time. And Raya and the Last Dragon was available at theaters, and you could pay $30 on Disney Plus to see it. It beat out Raya and the Last Dragon. It's made $46 million. This is all domestic. This argument does not hold any water, and they know it. And if they don't know it, they're totally unaware of the industry they're covering. Second, and more importantly, the recent history of movie musicals includes a number of lackluster opening weekends. 2016's La La Land, for instance, which ended with a $450 million gross on a budget of just $30 million, began with a limited theatrical release that expanded each successive weekend and was in theaters for more than 3 weeks before it had its first $10 million weekend. The Greatest Showman, which also grossed close to $450 million, brought in just $9 million during its first weekend and fell short of predictions for its first 6 days. It's true that In the Heights will face some stiff competition in the coming weeks. With the impending releases of Fast and Furious 9, we're still making these movies, and Black Widow, nobody cares. But it's also true that movie musicals without franchise power have often succeeded without huge opening weekends. This is true. And this is why I'm not calling it a failure yet, because Musicals are weird, and they do weird things at the box office, so you don't know yet. But it's not trending in a good direction. And I said Black Widow, nobody cares. Yes, I'm sure people want to go see Black Widow, but it's a prequel movie for a character that's dead. So, it is what it is. They should have released it 10 years ago. Just saying. Regardless, this is my favorite argument. Regardless of what kind of money In the Heights brings in, the film can't be judged a success or failure strictly on the merits of its box office take. They're already laying down the argument. Oh no, it doesn't matter. It's success. It's successful. See, yeah, it didn't make any money, but it's successful because the money doesn't matter. They're already laying this argument down, and they're not the only ones. I'll show you in a minute. Film streaming presence on HBO Max means its impact is much larger than its ticket sales. No, it doesn't. Its ticket sales availability and its HBO Max streaming availability does not make it some huge phenomenon. It already exists. There's already movies that have done the same thing. And then it gets better. And it's already gaining award season buzz for its gorgeously told story, stunning musical numbers, and stellar performances. Award season means nothing. This is how award season works, okay? For those of you who don't know. In the award season, the studios shop their movies around to the powers that be, and they push them for awards. And they'll take people to parties, and they'll do everything short of handing over money. It's basically a presidential election, but with movie awards. And that's why a lot of times you'll see awards where people are like, huh? It already gaining award season buzz is meaningless. That just means that Warner Brothers is like, hey, Lin Manuel Miranda plus diversity, let's get awards. That's it. 97% fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes. We all know that's meaningless. In the Heights is already a success by all critical metrics. So it's already a success, guys. You don't even have to go see it. It's already successful. So if you're one of those people that really likes it and they want it to do well, you don't have to go see it. Because it's already successful. It has been deemed so by the press. It's successful. Never mind the numbers. Please don't look at the man behind the curtain. It's successful. Just deal with it. And this is a refrain you're going to see from other outlets. Now, I have only brought up a couple, but I could do this all day. Okay? I just didn't want to. So this is from Collider. In the Heights, and why it's okay for movies to fail this summer. The words dud and bomb should be deleted from our vocabulary this summer. Last weekend, the all-around fantastic. See, they're already, this is great. Great movie. No bias here at all. We're definitely not going to skew the numbers. In the Heights finally hit theaters, sending a show-stopping message that movies are on... Okay, I love this sentence. This is my favorite sentence that I've read in the last week because it's so awesome. Finally hit theaters, sending a show-stopping message that movies are on their way back to the big screen. You mean to tell me that In the Heights, a movie people haven't heard of that's made less than $20 million in its opening week. Forget weekend, week. You mean to tell me that movie is the one that announces the return of films to theaters? Not Godzilla vs. Kong? Or Mortal Kombat? Or, I don't know, Demon Train? You gotta be kidding me. This is the movie that did it. Not Godzilla vs. Kong and it's like rolling around in cash. Not Mugen Train and it's like giant amounts of money. And certainly not Mortal Kombat and its surprising amounts of money. No. No, what tells you officially that movies are back in theaters is In the Heights. Wow. I did not know this. I have been educated. However, there's still a very real pandemic at large in the country, with less than half of citizens fully vaccinated as of this writing. It takes a while to vaccinate 350 million people. Even the movie's arresting musical numbers shouldn't be expected to bear the pressure of getting people to break free of their comfort zones established over the last year and head off to poorly ventilated, minimal capacity theaters where people possibly not vaccinated are likely keeping their masks off after snacking and not taking protocols. Oh my god. Guys, I don't know if anybody told Collider, but some other movies have come out. Okay? There was one with a big lizard and a monkey, and there was one with a guy that wants people to get over here, and there was something else with some big eyes and some swords on a train. Maybe they've heard of these movies. I mean, it doesn't look like they've heard of these movies, but these movies have all done very well in theaters and brought in a bunch of money in theaters, specifically. Way more than In the Heights has to this point. But no, it's all in the pandemic, you see. Because of the pandemic, people aren't going to theaters, guys. They're just not going. And you can't expect the movie that announces the return of movies to just free everybody from their fear. Collider's such a joke. Also, can I just say, props to this sentence for getting past the editors. Additionally, the movie debuted on HBO Max. See, I told you that would happen. I told you everybody was going to say this, and here it is. The movie debuted on HBO Max the same day, meaning anyone with a subscription could stay at home and watch it with family and friends. Yes, because Godzilla vs. Kong, Mortal Kombat, and Mugen Train, and Tom and Jerry didn't also have the same thing. Taking all that into account, alongside the fact the industry is in general state of recovery, yes, and that wasn't true of Godzilla vs. Kong, Mugen Train, Mortal Kombat, and Tom and Jerry. The fact the industry should make it easy to accept if In the Heights, or any summer movie for that matter, doesn't break the box office. Here's a newsflash, Collider. They already have. Yet words like disappointing, fizzle, and lackluster littered headlines in major publications like CNN and The Hollywood Reporter. Doom signaling the movie's box office results within the first 24 hours of its release, as if none of these factors crossed anyone's mind. No, they're probably just aware of all the other movies that have come out and done well. It grossed over $11 million its first weekend, falling about $500,000 short of claiming the top spot from A Quiet Place Part 2, a sequel to a movie that a lot of people aren't going to see because it's a horror movie, and a lot of people don't like horror movies. A lot of people do, which is why it did well, but a lot of people also don't. Problem with all this hyperbolic, there's no hyperbole in this article. Woe-laden analysis isn't that In the Heights weekend total was lower than other recent releases, because it admittedly was. Oh, so you're aware of the other movies that have come out. The issue lies in steering all the way into panic mode and performing an autopsy on a movie's failure to meet expectations in a climate where there should be no expectations at all. So, ignore reality, ignore all these movies that have come out, and declare the movie a success because nothing can possibly be a failure because some people got sick in a pandemic and now people are going back to theaters, but not really, because they might be worried that Jim Bob over in the seat next to them isn't putting their mask on between bites of popcorn. Guys, come on. No expectations at all. Pundits can throw all the numbers they want at the screen like they did before the world screeched to a halt, comparing and contrasting box office totals and adding in factors like IP awareness, star power, franchise fatigue, and nothing else good was on. Oh, here they finally they finally acknowledge other movies exist. This is a great article. I didn't know that Collider was a comedy place. Yeah, no one's got franchise fatigue over In the Heights, guys. And there is no star power except for Lin Manuel Miranda. And IP awareness is an issue because At least one person here didn't hear of it. But none of that matters yet. Yes, it's great. Godzilla vs. Kong, A Quiet Place 2 performed well. And it's equally great. Mortal Kombat and The Conjuring 3 also showed promise. Mortal Kombat blew projections out of the water, but it's now claimed that the encouraging box office receipts of those films, all of which were either sequels or adaptations of popular properties, means the movie industry has returned to normal, and the new release that doesn't match those numbers as a dud is absurd. No, it's not. If those movies can come out and do well, so can this one. But it didn't. When Cruella made about $47 million between theaters and Disney Plus this first weekend, a Disney spokesperson said Memorial Day weekend marked the first time consumers have had substantial choice in movie viewing since the onset of the pandemic, and they were right. As of just over a week ago, audiences have lots to choose from in theaters for the first time in a year, signaling that business is on the upswing, or that movies are being released. So why then are we already putting box office performance under a microscope a week later? Why not? There's simply not enough data out there to suggest movies like In the Heights should be labeled as disappointing. Now, I will say I agree with that. I don't think you can say this movie is disappointing until you have a lot more numbers. But you can certainly say it had a disappointing weekend. It was projected, and they don't say this here in this article because that would go against their argument. It was projected to make like $25 million on its opening weekend, and it made 11. That's disappointing, right? That's the definition of disappointing. What happens next week if F9 doesn't make close to $100 million in opening the weekend? Well, it probably won't. $100 million is you're making absurd arguments here. Marvel's Black Widow arrives 2 weeks later, both in theaters and on Disney Plus. So again, what happens if it doesn't open as well as Marvel's other hits? We're not comparing it to Marvel's other hits. You would compare it to other movies that have come out in this time period. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, I'm done with the comedy show. You get the point. So, this is what actually brought me awareness of. This is the fakest apology I have read in some time. And that's fine. He shouldn't apologize for this in the first place. But let's go ahead. Actor and director Lin Manuel Miranda has apologized for failing to adequately represent Afro-Latinos in his latest musical project, In the Heights, that is centered on New York's Latino communities. The Hamilton star posted a note to social media on Monday acknowledging the casting for his latest project, set in the diverse neighborhood of Washington Heights in Upper Manhattan, had lapsed into colorism, which is broadly defined as prejudice or discrimination against darker skin tones within the same racial group. In trying to paint a mosaic of this community, we fell short. Tells you stuff he's done. Grace told The Root that until she made the film, she hadn't recognized that she didn't really get to see myself or people that look like my siblings that are darker than me on screen. She added, "We're not going to get everything right in a movie. We tried our best on all fronts." In his apology, Miranda said, "It is clear that many in our dark-skinned Afro-Latino community don't feel sufficiently represented within it, particularly among the leading roles. I can hear the hurt and frustration over colorism, of feeling unseen in the feedback. I hear that without sufficient dark-skinned Afro-Latino representation, the work feels extractive of the community we wanted so much to represent with pride and joy. I'm trying to hold space for both the incredible pride in the movie we made and be accountable for our shortcomings. Promise to do better in my future projects. I'm dedicated to learning and evolving." This is what they always say with these apologies. You just flip out the words, Afro-Latino and all that stuff, and you keep the basic structure. All these apologies read the same way. And that's why I say I don't think he's as woke as people think he is. What I think Lin Manuel Miranda is a man who understands his audience and is good at marketing and putting together shows that appeal to that audience. Now, whether that audience goes to theaters or not is another question. Hamilton did very well post-Broadway, but it did very well post-Broadway because it was already super popular with normies after its Broadway run. Had it just come out, it wouldn't have, it may have gained steam eventually, but it would have probably done very similar to what In the Heights is doing right now, initially. But it was already a hugely popular success on Broadway. Now, Broadway is a different beast. It's a very liberal sphere, typically. And by liberal, I don't mean politically. I mean in terms of the agenda-driven and the people who move in that direction. There's a lot of them on Broadway. And the difference between In the Heights being successful on Broadway and Hamilton being successful on Broadway is Hamilton hit that mass appeal. Whereas In the Heights, most people probably hadn't heard of if they don't go to Broadway musicals. But people had certainly heard of Hamilton. So, I think he's talented in those regards. The music generally isn't my kind of music. But that's not a problem with him. That just means I'm not his target audience. I'm definitely not his target audience. As far as this movie goes, my prediction would be that it's not going to become a giant super success. You'll see it do better, probably, but I don't think it's going to take off. It's got a very specific niche audience, and hang on, I just saw something. Look at this. Lin Manuel Miranda, it's In the Heights, could boost movie theaters recovery. That didn't age well. So, this to me is mostly indicative of just how ridiculous our entertainment media has become. They have clear desires for winners and losers. They have people that they, not people, well, yes, people and movies they pick that they think need to succeed, must succeed, so they word everything to say, well, even if it does poorly at the box office, it's still a success, because they talked about it at award shows and stuff. And Rotten Tomatoes. I actually think this is probably the clearest case of it that we've had from any of the other movies. When we've seen them shill for Star Wars, when we've seen them shill for Marvel. But you could always fall back on the argument with those movies that they did well in terms of box office numbers. This one has not. Regardless of all the crap they say up there, it has not done well. Could it do well? Yes. Because as the other article justifiably pointed out, musicals are weird. So we'll keep an eye on it, and if it suddenly becomes a success, we can talk about that too. It is what it is, unfortunately. In the Heights comes out, and it almost ties In a Quiet Place 2's initials, but In a Quiet Place 2's already moved to $70 million on the month, and $127 million. It's not In the Heights, or Not a Quiet Place 2, The Conjuring, but it's already at $50 million versus 16. It's not even close, and you can't. I mean, dude, you lost to a movie with the worst title ever, in the Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard. It's a silly argument, and it just shows how in the pocket of specific interests these people are. And I think they're in the pocket, not literally. I don't think Lin Manuel Miranda's going out paying them, but they want him to succeed because of his casting choices and his topics fit into their agenda-driven ideology. And I don't think he is that ideological. I do think he's ideological. I think there's evidence of that, certainly in Hamilton. But I think mostly he's just well aware of who his target audience is. But because their interests sort of semi-align in this case, all these shill media sites are coming out and declaring the movie successful regardless of the physical evidence contrary. Let me know what you think of all this. Let me know what you think of Lin Manuel Miranda in the comments. If you like the video, please hit the like button. If you're not subscribed, please consider subscribing. Hit the bell for notifications, and I will see you next time.